Hey, 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 welcome back to Common Mansplaining, where no elites are allowed and no opinion is too common. I'm Eddie, and that's Christian.
The voice of the common man.
Yes, sir, yes, sir. And today we're going to discuss something that has blown way out of proportion, which is the controversy of the H1B visas. So, for those of you who have not been watching, what has happened recently is that Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk have made some very provocative statements online. They have gone to battle in favor of the H1B visa program, and as a matter of fact, even in favor of upping the current allowed maximums each year, which I think are at the moment I want to say like 65,000 and here I can find it just so I'm not misquoting. Yeah, 65,020 for those graduating with master's degrees or higher. So what this is a visa that allows employers in America to bring over specialty positions, basically people who are exceptionally qualified in the unique area, for example, engineering, right? And one would have to notice that both Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy made their fortunes off of bringing over specialty workers from other nations. So it can't go missed that this happens to particularly help both of them directly. Mm-hmm. But that having been said, there's some more general topics at play here. But as people have pushed back, one of the problems with this is that it is an avenue for corruption, and it is also a situation in which Trump kind of got elected on this concept of like slowing the immigration issue down, and this is an avenue to speed it back up again. So it's seemingly at odds with Trump's original mandate.
I would take a little bit of issue with that. I think Trump's initial mandate that is to deal with the violent and criminals crossing our border. Yeah. Especially those who, and then secondly, to slow and deal with people who are coming across not at a customs office, not declaring themselves. Yes. So anybody illegally, who's just wandering in. Those are sort of the higher priorities that even moderates or people who are voting Democrat switch borders, because that has gotten so bad that even violent Venezuelan criminals are not enough for them to change their policy, right? What they realized is that Kamala Harris was put in charge of the border, and it wasn't her incompetence, it was her policy. She wanted this to happen. She was a no deport. She looked at it and she says, I don't want to deport anybody. Let's see what happens. Right? And we say, hey, we'd like to shut off all illegal immigration. Let's see what happens. Everybody calls the right racist, but obviously the effects, it was so and it was smart that the governors in Texas and other places and in Florida sent some of their illegals to liberal sanctuary states and let them feel the pain.
Very wise.
And I think that was, people experienced it, and why Trump, even though he didn't win New York and New Jersey, got a much higher percentage than he did before, because people encountered this when it was something that was born almost entirely by border states.
Right.
Now, so I would say that that's the big one. H1Bs have kind of flown under the radar, because when you have 5 million people illegally entering the country, that's going to get all the press. That's going to be the main concern, versus the 65,000 plus. Excuse me. These are generally higher paid people. They can afford to rent homes. They do pay taxes. And when their visas are up, they go home. They have a good record. They have a good track record of that. And generally, especially those from South India, and have a pretty good track record of not being highly criminal. So it's...
Yeah, I agree 100%. And one of the other issues at play here is that, it's like you said, Trump's mandate is mostly to do with illegal immigration, or those who have overstayed their welcome illegally after they after it's over.
That's what we want them to focus on right away. If like 3 years down the road, all right, are we still having too much immigration? Well, let's deal with that. So we don't want to stop all immigration. We want it to be legal. We want people to come through, declare themselves, get visas.
Right.
These are people, they want to do it the right way. And part of the reform is, sure we get. But so
now one thing to make mention of,
sure.
and this is where a lot of the controversy is coming in.
Sure.
Is, like I said, this does open up the avenue for corruption. What can happen is people can come over here on an H1B visa, and a lot of times it's like they're enslaved to the systems in a metric, right? They come over and now they're stuck with that company who has sponsored their arrival. They basically can't leave, and because they're here on that visa and stuck with that company, they're in a situation where they're going to accept less pay than a typical associate, right? Like if you normally would command a salary of, like, say, $250,000 in America, but you're lucky enough to come from, South India, where the conditions are not as great as they are in America, because let's face it, nowhere is really as great as it is in America. Then you'd probably accept 150 instead of 250 because, you get the quality of life that comes with it. You get the benefits package and everything else. But there's an added side effect, and that is if you've got, as an employer, if you've got people that are willing to accept that position for 150, now all of a sudden you don't have to pay others 250 to do it. And when they start competing for that position, if you've got a choice, you're going to pick the person that you can just port over and pay 150 a year instead of 250 a year. So there is a little...
Well, economics says you should pay less. Now, here's my experience. I worked in tech for a long time.
Yeah.
I worked with a lot of H1B visas.
Right.
I worked in banking software in California. Worked with one of my
sorry to hear that,
good friend Anil. We would commute down to a contract position, and they were all, 3 of them were all very recently in the country, and they just thought America was amazing. They were like, wow, this like off ramp is so beautiful. We would just start filming movies here. Where I'm like,
right.
It's an off ramp where they just sprinkled some wildflower seeds. Like, not a big deal, guys. They're like, oh my gosh, so beautiful. And so so they loved America, and generally, like, didn't want to make waves. We're happy to be here. We're grateful, and kind of exemplified the type of legal immigration that we'd want. Came here, definitely want to work, want to contribute to their societies. And for me, like, it didn't cost me a job. I worked along with them. Right. I think our team was probably about half Americans and half Southeast Asians.
Okay.
Now, they tend to be sponsored by a company, and then if they lose their job, then they have to go back home. So there is a sort of power imbalance where that company has it, but they can, while they're working for that company, they're free to search around, and if they get hired by somebody else, they can do that. So it's not exactly like slavery, but it's, if for some reason their employer doesn't like them, say, like, so we're on a contract, it was a 2-month job. When we finished the contract, even me, Americans, all of us were essentially laid off, our contract ended. We completed the project that we were supposed to do. So for me as a citizen, I just go on to my next job. For these guys, they had a bench, so they continue to be employed by this company so they can maintain their visa status. Okay. Right. So they'd be set on a bench and be paid a lower rate, but technically enough to keep them employed. But if while we were working, they had found a job by themselves, a full-time position or another one, they had the option to leave this company that they are with and go there. Right.
Interesting.
So they have to be employed, but it isn't exactly like slavery. They can, with the internet, there's stuff out there, but they have to move from job to job.
What if we, just floating this out here. This is like a thinking out loud.
Sure.
Because this is something I hadn't really, like, it's like,
I want to make one other point too.
Sure.
So when I worked in tech software for aerospace, it was actually swung much more H-1B visas than American citizens. The only
Okay.
American citizens were only there when they were required by the customer. And as soon as the customer didn't require that, I was bounced and replaced by H-1 visas, right? H-1Bs. Like, so I've had bad experiences that too. That was at United Technologies. But as far as the paying less, so the salaries that United Technologies were paying to these people were basically maybe within 5% of what they would pay to an American. But then the staffing company takes a big chunk.
Right.
So let's say United Technologies is paying $90,000 a year for this person, right? To do a job that comparably might pay 95 to 100, but it's pretty close.
Sure.
But they're only taking home 75 because the staffing company is taking a big chunk of that to manage their visa staff and give them this sort of thing. So that's, and so these staffing companies make a lot of money. They try to not make it where the companies have a hugely perverse option where the salaries are like where United Technologies is paying 75 versus what they would pay 100. So but it does allow them what they do, especially publicly traded companies. They like to have these people. They'll work on contract, and so then on their reporting, they don't have to list them as headcount, which is actually a big thing for Wall Street.
Yeah, for insurance and for a bunch of other stuffs, and that makes sense. And I mean, I understand that a lot of this is is just
so that's just some common experience. But I'm interested in your point.
Well, one question I had is like just again thinking out loud. Isn't it a relatively easy fix? Like, couldn't we just do something like if you are willing to grant somebody a sponsorship, to work? Then, they have a contract with you, they have a sponsorship with you, but after that is over, then, they're a free agent, at least, and give them a latitude, a little bit of time.
Yeah, there is a little bit of latitude. They do have like a few weeks, but if they, if they don't have, I mean, maybe like a year or two, maybe, but they only have like, I think 5 years on their clock, and then they've got to go back. Right. So it doesn't allow them to become permanent citizens unless they go through. They still have to wait in line. A lot of them, while they're here, if they like it, go through and have to wait and things like that. If they obviously have children here, then they become U.S. citizens, and you have some of the issues you have with that. But my experience, a lot of them wanted to go back to India anyway. Take some money back there anyway. But there is But there's definitely more than 65,000 a year there that would like to come to have the American experience, even if they don't want to settle here. If they want to do their 5 years or whatever, 5 to 8 years in America, there's a lot there. So there's Vivek and Elon knows that there's, let's just say, 5 million experienced people that would like to come here. And we're getting a little bit of a drip. They like to open that faucet a little bit more.
Well, so all right. So here's where a lot of the controversy came in. I don't know if you saw this particular part of it, but so of course, there was some backlash here and there, and people were fighting against the potential corruption. Mm-hmm. And Vivek Ramaswamy made a very very provocative comment. What he said was, if in the culture where, for example, and he referenced Saved by the Bell. With those of you and me probably remember this. Like, I don't know if everybody that's listening in our audience would, but for those in the culture where Screech and Steve Urkel weren't the revered group, right? Instead, it was Zach Morris, AC Slater, Stefan, the suave, debonair, athletic jocks were the revered group. Mm-hmm. In that culture, you're not as likely to find an aerospace engineering ace, right? Mm-hmm. And of course, that smacks of, it's got a little bit of racial tension there. But I'm wondering what you think about that. Like, what are your thoughts when that? Because I happen to agree to an extent. I know it seems like it's a kind of a sharp thing to say, like a harsh comment, and yet I see our academic achievements in America slide every single year, and I'm wondering if we don't maybe have the drive to excel at an academic level anymore.
So there's different levels. There are. I knew a lot of very, very good aerospace engineers who were U.S. citizens, and they talk like good old boys with Southern accents, and you would think that these guys, all they do is hunt and chew tobacco, but they know their software, aerospace software. Like anyway, and so and they're not like autistic geeks. Now it is, especially in that Silicon Valley bubble, and Elon Musk has a little bit of Aspergers. They tend to like some people that are a little bit socially awkward, the sort of stereotypical geek, because it's seen that they have less of a life that they can just be like,
just throw
work like crazy, right? And that's the thing. Like during startups, especially, like you'd work 90-hour weeks, and you'd want some guy who's like got nothing else going on and who wakes up dreaming code. And this is just your dream. This is your dream employee.
I've got it.
And so it's not that like and people that at a very early age like are like Screech or something are geeking out over audio, visual, and tech and stuff like that. It's not that the Zach Morrises or the bros or stuff can't learn those skills. Eventually, it comes to them. But it's going to be all right. 40 hours a week. They're going to stand up for their rights. They're not going to be pushed around. There's going to be other things going on in their life. And which made it, right? So at one point, right, when we were doing this drive, we were driving 2 hours each way for this job. And we were talking about the job the whole time, like in the car. We're talking about stuff. And so I'm like, we should be paid for this. This is work we're doing. We're not just turning on the radio. Right, this is just stuff, and then when we get there, we're however many to do. And so I said we should talk to them and talk to the VP, and we should get paid for this commute time because we're legitimately. I'm like, we're not lying,
right?
And they were like, but they were like, whoa, you're serious. Like you can do that. We can't rock the boat, right? The guy, he was an Indian guy, but I said, okay, I went up to him. His name is, he went by Veeps, but that was an acronym.
Pseudonym, yeah.
He had a name that was very hard for Americans to pronounce. But I go, hey, Veeps, we're working during this commute. I think we should be paid for it. And he looked at me and he's like, and I feel like he crunched some numbers in there, and it was like, okay, yeah, we'll pay you for that. And they came back and they're like, oh, right, because that's when I'm like, hey, this is a little. If at any point I felt like there was any type of exploitation, I wasn't going to stand for it. Right. As an American citizen, I'm going to work hard, things like that. But if you're getting stuff for free, and I'm like, or like if you don't want to pay us overtime or things like that, we can start our commute at 8 a.m. But if you want us arriving there. Right, things like that, and especially so, but he understood all the stuff and compensated us, but definitely they wanted me as a U.S. citizen to push that. Like they were weary about rocking the boat.
Sure, well,
and the bros will, well, the geeks, even the American geeks, the with the awkward geeks have a reputation for being you can push them around or things like that.
Okay, well, let me ask the question more broadly, because I don't dispute that there are going to be fantastic minds in every single culture on Earth, right?
Yeah.
But my question is more broadly. I mean, okay, so let me put it in my terms, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I grew up in Southern Durham, right?
Yeah.
Not a area of town that prized academic culture, right? Now, my parents prized it, and they not only did they prize it, they forced it upon me. I was not the kind of guy who was able to get away with like not doing my homework. It was get in there, You show me your work.
Mm-hmm.
No, you did this question and this question wrong. Go
Mm-hmm.
back and redo it. Like literally every step of the way was, and as a consequence, I learned to prioritize it and ended up graduating 7th in my class, right? In a very large school. So I had some personal academic achievement that didn't match the rest of the culture around me. But all the while having done that, despite the fact that I actually was an athletic jock, right? Like despite the fact that I was a wrestler and a basketball player and a soccer player and like on down the line.
Yeah.
Despite all that, I still got picked on because of my academic achievement on a daily basis. It was like, oh, here comes the nerd, here comes the know-it-all, here comes the the geek, the idiot. Like it's one of those. It's like, and that was a very routine type of negative pressure that was applied to anybody who was academically excellent at my school. I don't know if it's like that across the world. I don't know if it's like that across the country or right across the state, but it was certainly the case for me where if you wanted to be popular, you almost had to not succeed academically. And I don't know did you experience any of that or?
No, definitely the geeks were just people that were either social awkward or not attractive.
Okay.
If you were intelligent and excelled academically,
well, that explains it. I'm not terribly.
You weren't picked on. Though I mean the makeup of my school. Just a little bit of my history. I went to public schools. Went to a public school. My elementary school was over 50% Hispanic, so I was a minority, and we had a large Asian population as well. I remember 4th and 5th grade, I actually went to the bilingual class. So I was the only white kid, all Hispanic. 5th grade, it was Hispanic teachers. I got a nickname from the kids for being good at stuff. They nicknamed me Einstein.
Right? Gringo Einstein.
Well, they never called me Gringo Einstein, but they just called me Einstein. That I was good at school, but I was never picked on for that.
Right. Okay.
Because I was so much bigger than them. I was so much taller that they needed to show their machismo. So I was constantly challenged to fights.
Okay.
But they never actually resulted in fisticuffs. It was a thing that they had to show that they weren't scared of the big tall white guy.
Of course.
But other than that, and obviously I played sports with them and did stuff with them. But and all the way through high school, it was if you were good at school, that was, at least in my town, that was fine. It's different, even in public schools.
It's tough with just 2 anecdotes to really check the data, but I just have to say that I do see the academic standards falling. I mean, I definitely know for a fact that my kids are not held to the same academic excellence in school that I was. They may be held to the same excellence at home because their mother's very, super high, prioritizes academic excellence, as do I. But I don't know. The fact that I just find it hard to imagine such a school that would look down upon someone who's academically excellent or super intelligent in, say, China or India. I just don't. Now, maybe this is stereotyping, and maybe there are these schools, and I just don't know about it. But I find it hard to. It's difficult to imagine. The whole reason these stereotypes.
I don't know. I've never had that conversation with friends who went to school in India. I do know that they love their cricket, their athletes,
right.
and the movie stars, the people that are handsome, right? Pretty privilege is a big deal. But I think for the most part, right, that there is a lack of STEM jobs here in America. One of the big threats to job, is, we could have another conversation about this, is AI. And that a lot of these H1B visas are coming over and doing jobs that really AI might be a threat for. But there's,
almost certainly within the next 5 years will be.
But in general, my experience was, if it was going to be a contract like we need to staff up to get through this certain phase, they would really like to bring on H1Bs. But if, as far as permanent, we know these people are going to be here for 20, 25 years. They still liked American citizens. It was, and it's different here. So there are 3 or 4 places in the country that are like the Triangle, North Carolina Triangle, which is where we're filming from, right? We have a really high rate of qualified technical people here because of the elite universities, NC State, Duke, and
Research Triangle Park.
Research Triangle Park, and it attracts a certain number of things. So places that have a percentage of people that are educated, right, over 30%. It's basically like here, Research Triangle Park, Boston area, Boston Metro, DC Metro, San Jose Metro, and the Salt Lake City Provo Metro. Even Seattle and Austin, Texas fall just below that, but they're close. But those are sort of like what we consider the kind of tech hubs too, where you can get a lot of people. But sometimes it's hard. They want specific things and they want the options, especially when they've had H1B visas, who are somebody who's really good, maybe been working on the project for 5 to 8 years, and now they have to go back to India. They've run out their visa. Like they would really like to be able to retain that person and have them work on site. And so I can see. I think there's some room. I think there's some room for compromise to bring on more H1B visas. There is cost to American jobs, and we've got to adjust to that and find other ways to adapt. But I don't think it should be equated to illegal, especially
definitely not.
The people that don't declare themselves and don't
now,
identify themselves.
What, if any, measures would you suggest we put in place to stem the corruption, like to try to head that off at the pass? I mean, I don't assume that it's quite as rampant as people seem to make out online and on the X space, but I do acknowledge that it is possible and probably is happening to a minor degree. I'm guessing that at least somebody's taking advantage of it and is using.
Oh yeah, there's big money because when you do people and you get a percentage as your staffing agencies. There are many staffing agencies I work for them. They get a percentage of your paycheck. Sometimes, like I work for a staffing agency, they got $24 for every hour I work. Right?
It's like their own salary.
Yeah, right. And imagine scaling that. Imagine you have 100 employees. Right now, you're making $2,400 for every hour. And so they would obviously like those numbers to go up, but they could scale the H1B visas because of the work things. I think it's for the most part. I would say as a common man, I'm in favor of it. We should watch it. Obviously, shouldn't be limitless, but we should open it up, monitor, see what happens. If we have negative effects, then go back to what it was before. If it's good and we can adapt, then we can maybe expand it or things like that. I think it's worth trying something new, being a disruptor, but I definitely think the government should be clamping down on other types of immigration, illegal immigration first. And that we can find people who want to come here, who've been educated, who understand democratic institutions, don't want to break our laws, want to live peaceably.
I have to agree. I think I do. I agree. I think for the most part, I think that this is not a corruption issue for the most part. I think that while it may be taking place, and I'm sure, I mean, business people are charged with doing their job and keeping labor costs.
All right, here's what I've heard about as far as the corruption, as far as my friends that have worked in it. It's not so much in America because we would police it. It's in India. There's still much more as far as getting, one of those coveted slots. People willing to pay bribing and things like that, and not wait in line for those slots and things like that. And we don't understand their school system. There could be, right? We say, all right, it's got to be a master's degree. Now all of a sudden they maybe have inflation because we know what it takes to get a master's degree in America. right? If all of a
Right.
sudden Bermuda starts offering master's degrees that we can do in a week, then all of a sudden we're like,
That's a good point.
so I mean, we don't really have an accreditation, and I don't necessarily think we have to be in an accreditation type of thing, but there is, yeah, people are going to try to game the system, and as long as people try to do it properly for the most part, I think we should, if people are being honest, it should work, and we should
Yeah.
police it and try to trust but verify. And if we find negative flags,
Now, one
adjust
thing I'll
and
say
reduce
is
it.
one thing I'll say is, I mean, while there may be ulterior motives at play here, and
Mm-hmm.
I admit that is possible, um, I trust Elon and Vivek when they both say, in order to get the top 0.5% of engineers, for example,
Mm-hmm.
you need India, you need China. Like I trust that. I don't see any reason to assume that that would be false. And I mean,
Well,
that isn't to say that we're not capable of it here in America.
no, no,
That
no,
isn't,
no,
and
yeah,
that isn't to say
yeah,
that we don't make up a portion of
yeah.
it, but I trust that that is probably technically the case at the moment. Now, what
What
I'd
America
love to
has is
move
the
towards,
money. Yeah,
say again.
America has is the money. You want to bring knowledge, engineering capability to meet money,
Yeah, right.
right?
And what I'd love eventually is for America to be able to fulfill that 0.5, the top 0.5% slot without needing to outsource it. But that having been said, just because we need to right now, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that
Now, you want a
we want the
spicy
best
take?
ownership. Yeah, go
A
for it. Hit
spicy
me.
take. Some of the best engineers in tech are Russian,
Oh, I
right?
believe it.
Right,
I believe it.
and we could get if we were willing to allow Russians, Estonians, Lithuanians, large number of Poles, Czech, Slovaks, um, and even
Ukrainians, maybe even.
even Ukrainians. Well, Ukrainians can come here on refugee, so
Right. Okay.
we
Yeah,
don't
they're
have to.
free.
But there's a lot of India has been doing this the most, and they have a lot of sway and are trying to up their political position. But right, the H1 visa shouldn't be so focused on just Asia. Should also try to incorporate if there's people um, potentially in South America,
Yeah.
certainly Eastern. Um,
Again, it should be merit based. It shouldn't be.
well, certainly I'm saying Eastern Europe, and I think anyone that's one of our allies. India is not one of our NATO allies,
Yeah.
right? They're very, and they sometimes want to. China is definitely not. They want to
Yeah.
be geopolitical foes. They do stuff like that. That a priority, even for H1B, says should be anybody that's a NATO ally. If somebody from Sweden or Norway or England or France wants to come on an H1B visa for 5 years, they should have priority over people that aren't our allies. I think that's, you know, pretty
So you
common.
don't
Two
think?
twenty.
Yeah. I still don't know where I come down on that. I mean, I know that like obviously when it comes to general admittance into the nation, I think that allies should be given priority. But when it comes to something that is a coveted position based on merit,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that it should matter much. I mean, I think that we should definitely include our allies at every opportunity, right? I
Yeah.
think there's no reason that we should ever not allow our allies in.
Yeah. They should
But
have that option in H1B visas. They don't necessarily have a pipeline of
right, right,
but that if somebody said, hey, I'd like to walk into a U.S. consulate in Estonia, said I'd like to come to work in America, apply for jobs in America on an H-1B visa, how would I go about doing it? That there would be systems in place for that, so
right.
that it wasn't just exclusively for India and China.
Yeah, like why not? Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I mean, I think in a perfect world, of course, if I could wave the magic wand, it would be like the 65,000 best engineers around the world that want to come to America get the spot, right? As opposed to, no, we're taking 50,000 from India and 10,000 from Pakistan
Well, I
and
mean,
whatever,
and I think we could. Well, yeah, we
whatever.
can
Right?
we can expand that and do that. But I think that there, and we should watch it for
Now, what do you think a
um,
sweet spot is? Like at that 100,000 total, or 120.
So demand should say that, but I guess at a point where they can bring these people on and they're not laying off U.S. citizens.
So that's the other critique. Although I have not been able to verify that that's actually happening. I mean, I
Yeah,
get the, like, people are saying that because this available pool of employees is here, that there are people not being hired, but that's a much harder thing to find, right?
I think maybe they're less being hired uh, uh, for contract positions.
Mm,
For permanent jobs, I think it's still U.S. citizens. Now, there was
so,
a lot of things have changed actually in the last 4 years. I've been in sales since 2020,
fair.
and I did see a report today that after George Floyd and the big push, that major companies were hiring essentially per 1,000 jobs, it was like 90% of them were DI hires, and that the rate of hiring, white dudes actually, went down. I can show you graphs on that. So
That's just
that's
ridiculous.
the type of reverse racism or discrimination. Like, and they were pleasing the current administration. These are the people in power, right? But that if we can get away from that, that's why we have to dismantle DEI and not have it be a virtue signaling. Oh, I have to. It's better for me to hire an H1B visa for diversity rather than be, all right, this is a job that I've tried to staff, haven't been able to find someone in America, an American citizen, to do it. Now I'd like to go H1B.
Right, right.
Um, Ostensibly, it should be that, that Americans have had a chance to apply for that and nobody's applying. And then
Yeah,
you say, all right, I want to fill this position with H1B.
yeah. What do you guys think at home? Give us some comments, give us some spicy takes, and let us know what you think, because I kind of feel compelled to back Elon and Vivek.
Yeah,
I mean, they at the very least, if you're going to go to battle with those guys over what's best for the tech sector, understand that they bring an outrageous amount of expertise to bear. Remember that they've put outrageous amounts of resources, time, and energy into the current administration. So, like, don't forget the respect that goes into all that. I mean, I think a lot of the comments that are being slung around online are like very, very disrespectful, very, very combative.
yeah.
When these guys have,
This is not the hill you want to die on. Like,
yeah,
make sure
agreed, agreed.
if you
There's
want to
definitely
hold,
other enemies out there to.
hold Trump's feet to the fire to stop violent, criminal, illegal immigrants. H-1B visas have showed they want to live peaceably here, and come in and
Yeah,
try to do it the right way. Is there going to be some negatives? Yes. Are they ones that we can mitigate, um, or are they as bad? I think they're more positives than negatives. This is the type of thing, and I think we should just maybe chill, and not
yeah,
overreact.
right.
Yeah. So anyway, that's my
Agreed.
common man
But
take.
yeah, let us know what you think, and we'll see you next time on Common Mansplaining.